Hello,
Hey guys.
everyone. It's Natai and Hans again. We're reading from Coming Back, and we're reading Chapter 6 today. So I hope everyone's doing well with COVID, depending on how much it's affecting you. We know it's still going on and affecting some of us more than others. It's not fun, but, stay strong, and hopefully, if you're listening to this, it's helpful in some way. Hans, do you want to start this one?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Chapter 6, Logic of Reincarnation. Has it occurred, it's a little quote from Somerset Maugham from The Razor's Edge. Has it occurred to you that transmigration is at once an explanation and a justification of the evil of the world? If the evils we suffer are the result of sins committed in our past lives, we can bear them with resignation and hope that if, in this one, we strive towards virtue, our future lives will be less afflicted. I like that.
That's nice. Can you make sure your double check your mic volume. Just hit the up button a couple of times because I can never remember which one I turned down for you, which one I turned up for myself. You're good. You're all the way up.
All right. 2 children are born at the same time on the same day. The parents of the first are wealthy and well-educated, excuse me, and have anxiously awaited the arrival of their firstborn for years. Their child, a boy, is bright, healthy, and attractive, with a future full of promise. Surely destiny has smiled upon him. The second child enters into an entirely different world. He is born to a mother who was abandoned while pregnant. In her poverty, she feels little enthusiasm to rear her sickly new offspring. The road ahead is fraught with difficulties and hardships, and to rise above them will not be easy. The world is full of disparities like these. Blatant inequalities that often provoke questions. How could Providence be so unfair? What did George and Mary do to have their son born blind? They're good people. God is so unkind. The principles of reincarnation, however, allow us to view life with a much broader perspective, from the standpoint of eternity. From this point of view, one brief lifetime is seen not as the beginning of our existence, but as nothing more than a flash in time, and we can understand that an apparently pious person who may be suffering greatly is reaping the effects of impious activities performed in this or previous lives. With this broader vision of universal justice, we can see how each individual soul is alone responsible for his own karma. Our actions are compared to seeds. Initially, they are performed or planted, and over the course of time, they gradually fructify, releasing the resultant reactions. Such reactions may produce either suffering or enjoyment for the living being, and he may respond by either improving his character or by becoming increasingly animal-like. In either case, the laws of reincarnation operate impartially to award each living being the destiny he has earned by his previous actions. So it's really saying it's not God punishing.
Yeah, well, a lot of us like to
it's
blame
us.
someone other than ourselves for our
Exactly.
current situation, for whatever. And of course, sometimes there are things outside of our control, but I think the point is there's a lot more in our control than we think,
Yeah.
if you're running late to work and you're stuck behind a truck and you left 10 minutes later than you should have left, it's not really the truck's fault that they're going the speed limit and not 10 over like you'd like them to be going, even though in the moment you're like,
I'm behind the slow. I'm late because I got stuck behind a truck.
Yeah. It's like, no, you're late because you didn't give yourself a buffer. Yes, you don't have control, but knowing that you do have control because you know you can't control these outside factors. So give yourself a buffer when you're on your way to work.
I like that.
And not that I take that advice. I'm just saying.
Hashtag give yourself a buffer.
Yeah, I should do that myself.
Life
But
buffer.
this is something that an easy example.
Yeah. A criminal chooses to enter prison by willful transgression of the law, but another man may be appointed to sit on the Supreme Court by dint of his excellence of service. In the same way, the soul chooses his own destiny, including the selection of a specific physical form based on past and present desires and actions. No one can truthfully lament, "I didn't ask to be born." In the scheme of repeated births and deaths in this material world, man proposes and God disposes. Just as a person selects an automobile based on personal driving needs and purchasing power, we ourselves determine by our own desires and actions. What kind of body material nature will arrange for us next? If a human being wastes this valuable form of life, which is meant only for self-realization, by engaging solely in animal activities of eating, sleeping, sex, and bodily defense, God will allow him to be placed in a species with more facility for such sense pleasures, but without the disturbing inhibitions and responsibilities experienced in the human form. Wow. So it's not that having the animal form of life is a punishment.
It's
more that
it's not.
God is saying, oh, you don't want the human form of life.
You would like to enjoy this type
enjoy
of
like
activity.
A hog or a dog.
Yeah, let me make
So
you
it's
a hog
actually
or a
God
dog.
giving you what you really want.
Yeah, we complain about it later, like how did I get this? But whatever we're dealing with now is something that we at some point thought we wanted, apparently. One way or the other.
I was telling Shruti the other day, I don't remember really what we were talking about, or what brought up the conversation, but, cockroaches and flies. And Chara was like, God, cockroaches are so disgusting, but then 2 flies came in the house, and I said, well, I think flies are even more disgusting, because flies love to eat shit. And they fly, and they land on poop, and then you see them going elsewhere. And Chara's like, well, cockroaches do that too. I said, yeah, but I don't really see cockroaches. I mean, I know they do, and they run around, and they skitter all over, and they're gross and big. But I said, flies, like, poop is the heavenly planet for flies. Like,
Yeah, that is their main goal. It's not like something they happen over. They go for
it's
it.
A pile of poop.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there thinking that's disgusting, but they're like, they're in heaven.
Yeah.
That's awful.
That is very awful.
God.
Very, very awful. Hold on one second. When you reset your mic, it is running again, right? Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Where are we? Oh, I see. For example, top of the page.
For example, a gluttonous person who indiscriminately gorges himself on vast and varied quantities of victuals. I like that.
Victuals.
May be offered by material nature the body of a pig or a goat, a form which allows him to indiscriminately savor garbage and refuse.
Pretty much what you were just talking about. Yeah.
This liberal system of reward and punishment may appear shocking at first, but it is perfectly equitable and compatible with the conception of God as an all-compassionate being. For the living being to enjoy the sense gratification of his choice, he needs an appropriate body. For nature to place the living entity in the body he craves is the proper fulfillment of that individual's desires. Another common misconception, dispelled by the clear logic of reincarnation, concerns religious dogma, claiming that everything rests on our performance in this one lifetime only, warning that if we lead a vicious or immoral life, we will be condemned to eternal damnation in the darkest region of hell, without a prayer of emancipation. So, yeah, see, that's my biggest issue with, like, I've read much of the Bible and Jesus' teachings, and there's a lot of wisdom there, but I think where Christianity loses me is, and granted, a lot of it is more Old Testament, but that whole fire and brimstone thing, that if you don't make it in this lifetime, you're going to burn in hell forever, that, like, to me, just sounds, A, awful, and B, like, a God like that, how can you call him all merciful? That's not merciful. That's like cruel.
Yeah.
And by nature, God he's full of,
I think it comes from too much identifying with this current life.
Yeah.
Because in comparison, like you're thinking like at the end of this life I go there, so then that's it.
Yeah.
But if you realize that you come back later, maybe a couple thousand years later, depending on what you did, or 100 years or whatever, in some other form.
Or maybe it makes people uncomfortable, so they would rather think this is it.
Well, yeah, and then if they do good this time, they get out. They're guaranteed that they never have to deal with this again. Even if they only, I mean, you see the examples that are currently set are not like they're living these like super pious lives. They're just like just not doing any like mass murder and stuff, and you're not doing anything real crazy, and you're living like you're being a decent person.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're like the example that is set nowadays, again, not like talking about what other in the past, but like it's basically like just be a half decent person and you'll get into heaven no problem. And it's like, And again, like on the opposite side of it, it's like this eternal damnation for being a little bit bad in certain areas, and then like no problem for these other little transgressions. Like, as you know, like,
don't work like that.
And it's like that doesn't, like, it just doesn't make sense to
No,
me.
it
Again,
doesn't.
like
It
that's
doesn't
where it
make
loses.
sense.
That's where it loses
Logically,
me.
it doesn't make sense.
It like loses me on the logic perspective. It just seems like very improportionally weighted. It's like that crazy teacher in college that doesn't know
exactly.
how to grade
Bipolar,
like,
bipolar God.
Yeah, it doesn't seem.
I don't agree. But the thing is, when you read some of, well, not some, but most or all of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus,
Yeah.
he does not present God like that.
Well, I was going to say that we're referencing what's available now, which is probably not, or almost definitely not, what was available then.
Yeah, I mean, I think people tend to take things
leg?
out of context, and they. It's real, you know. I see a lot of people that want to say, "Oh, we need to, you know, be a good Christian." But I think a lot of people, and when I say good Christian, I'm also referring to the good Hindu, the good Muslim, good whatever religion you are. There's a tendency, I think, for us to all take that for granted. And
also, the one thing that's always baffled me about it's not just Christians, it's not just Muslims, it's not just Hindus, it's not just what is the most? I was gonna say, what are we even like? I always refer to this as Hare Krishnas, but is that the most commonly referred term?
I guess technically we would be practitioners of Bhakti Yoga.
Okay. So like Hare Krishnas, practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, devotees of Krishna, whatever, Vaishnavas. That's probably the best one. Which is a Sanskrit word to make no sense to anybody other than us, but it's probably the best one. But
actually, Vaishnava. What does Vaishnava even mean? Dang.
It's devotee, I think. I think it's Sanskrit.
I don't know the Sanskrit definition.
But I want to say it's like, is it student of Bhakti? I don't know. I'm just guessing at that point. It's like somewhere in the recesses of my mind.
Yeah, go to sanskritdictionary.com. That's a good thing. If we're going to throw a word out there.
We should maybe know what the actual definition is. We just use it so commonly that I'm just like, I know what I use it for and what I've commonly heard it used for, but... Vaishnavism, what does that stand for? Oh, Vaishnav, okay, but yeah. It's a Hindu denomination. Well, that's debatable. Vaishnava definition. So, a member of one of the main branches of... This is like a nowadays translation.
Go to sanskritdictionary.com.
Hold on.
Vaishnava?
What are you telling me to go to?
SanskritDictionary.com.
Sanskrit. It'll fix it. Dictionary. Okay, and now look it up. Because I'm going to say that's like a very like nowadays in terms of like, oh, it's something to do with Hindus is basically all that's telling us. That's amazing sometimes when you look up certain things and you realize that Google still didn't quite have it together in certain areas. They do good, but...
Press search.
Search. I was like, what the hell do I press on here? Okay. So...
Should find it. Did it not?
Nope. Maybe I have to spell it without the H, maybe?
Maybe.
Actually, I don't even know. How is that spelled without the H? Is it just like this?
Go to Vedabase.io.
Wait, hold on. What is this? Oh, geez. Okay. Why is it not Vedabase?
Yeah, Vedabase.io. So the really cool thing about this, it's all of Prabhupada's books on there, and they have a search function. So if you want to find anything Prabhupada ever spoke about, you can go to the search function.
Right, and then just type
and it will bring up all the different books where he or even lectures and japa walks.
That's not a convenient way to pop up for me. It completely blocked my ability to type. All right, so let's search. I don't think I'm misspelling it. Yeah, there it is. That's the way it's spelled.
Put Vaishnava definition.
You think it'll find that? I feel like it's going to look for that combination of words. Yeah. It's not finding definition with it. It's looking for that in words. Vaishnav, devotees of the Lord. Well, he's using it in addition to devotees, so I guess it doesn't mean devotees. Yeah, it's just looking them up separately. It's not finding them together. Vaishnav. I mean, it basically seems to mean something along the lines of, what's Vaish? Is the question. And Nava. What's Nava mean?
I'm not sure my Sanskrit is super rusty, bro.
Yeah, it's been years.
I'll have to
It's
look
something
it up.
along the lines of students of Krishna, or something along those lines. It's used to like someone who's surrendered to the Lord. Thank you very much for this Vaishnav quality. Has advised the Vaishnav to be humbler than the straw and more tolerant than the tree.
So I think there's like technically Vaishnava means
It's like a lifestyle. It's like a
well,
humble,
you're a
like
I think
student.
it refers to people, members of like the Gaudiya Math
right.
like tradition, or students of.
They're basically they're people who
worshippers
are
of
practicing
Krishna,
practicing
bhakti
the
yoga.
bhakti yoga, basically somewhere along those lines. But no, I got lost in what the heck we were talking about before that. I don't remember what we were going to say or why that came up even. Oh, I was saying that like this idea that people have to come from a perspective of this is what I believe, and you need to believe it also, or else we're gonna have a huge problem. And it's like,
what? Yeah.
And also, like, if you look at any of the teachings, maybe not any, but most of the teachings, when you read through them, the people that you're learning from, the teachings that you're taking and accepting as your truth, that is not how that person handled it. That person was very merciful to people that didn't understand. It's like, that's okay, that's fine. Like in like our religion, there's like moments where like, Jagai and Mata like smashed a pot over one of Nityananda's head and he's bleeding from his head and people wanted to do revenge and Nityananda's like, no, it's fine. Like, he didn't teach this like, oh, well, you offended me and now you're, he was merciful and he's an expansion of the Lord.
Lord Chaitanya's about to behead you with his chakra. Yeah. Karma, fools! No, it was always about
and
mercy.
Jesus was merciful.
Yeah.
And I've never read the Bible to the extent that you have, but just like from my understanding of it, from having friends that we should read some stuff like that. That would be cool.
From some of the other.
I think we should get some other books. It'd be interesting.
Because there are some very fascinating teachings of Jesus, and when you read, like that's like really fascinating thing. Because there's many rumors, that Jesus went to because he traveled abroad for several years.
Yeah, he was like gone, right, and then he came back.
Yeah, and
he had all these teachings.
There are supposedly, references to him or other holy men from the Middle East that came to India to learn.
Right.
I mean,
it makes sense. They're similar
if you listen to
in
his
essence.
teachings in the New Testament with an understanding of Vedic philosophy, it's very clear that he was also a student of Vedic philosophy. The way he presents the relationship between us and other living beings and God, it's very clear that he was heavily influenced by not the Judeo, or the Judeo like influence. It was more influence from the Vedic kind of philosophy and teachings.
Yeah.
Buddhism, like that kind of. There's some hints, and if we read, like, I think if we actually read some of his stuff, we'd be able to point out, like, oh, look, these are the similarities between this, and I think that would be really cool to do.
Yeah, we should get one of those books. I used to have a Bible somewhere, but I don't know where it went. Okay, so I think I gave it away to somebody. You're on
another common misconception,
another common,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry for the sidetrack, but that was good. Another common misconception dispelled by the clear logic of reincarnation concerns religious dogma, claiming that everything rests on our performance in this one life. Oh, I did read this already. Without a prayer for emancipation. Okay. Understandably sensitive, God-conscious people find such a system of ultimate justice more demoniac than divine. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that man can show compassion towards others, but God is incapable of such feelings?
Yep.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
These doctrines portray God as a heartless father who allows his children to be misled and then coldly witnesses their endless punishment and persecution. Yeah, that's Satan. That's not God. Yeah. That's evil as hell.
Yep.
The Native Americans and all these tribal cultures. So you're telling me that they're going to burn in hell forever because they never got the chance to hear about Jesus? Doesn't make sense.
No.
Doesn't make sense. Such unreasonable teachings ignore the eternal bond of love that exists between God and his intimate expansions, the living beings. By definition, man is made in the image of God. God must possess all qualities to the highest degree of perfection. I mean, by definition, that's...
Yeah.
One of these qualities is mercy. The notion that after one brief life, a human being can be consigned to suffer eternally in hell is not consistent with the conception of a supreme being possessing infinite mercy. Even an ordinary father would give his son more than one chance to make his life perfect.
Yeah.
I mean,
For real.
That's like basic logic right there. The Vedic literatures repeatedly extol the magnanimous nature of God. Krishna is even merciful to those who openly despise him, for he is situated within everyone's heart and gives all living beings the opportunity to realize their dreams and ambitions. Actually, the Lord's mercy knows no end. Krishna is unlimitedly merciful, and his mercy is also causeless. So he doesn't have...
You don't need to give him a reason.
Yeah, you don't.
It's
Yeah,
not
he doesn't
tit for
need
tat.
a reason. The reason is because we exist, and
Yeah.
therefore he loves us. We may not be deserving due to our sinful activities, but the Lord loves every living being so much that he repeatedly gives them opportunities to transcend the cycle of birth and death. Kunti Devi, a great devotee of Krishna, she's the mother of the Pandavas from the Mahabharata. Kunti Devi, a great devotee of Krishna, tells the Lord, "You are the supreme controller without beginning or end, and in distributing your causeless mercy, you are equal to everyone." I think that's actually from the teachings of Queen Kunti, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.
Yeah, I
Chapter
know that's
1,
somewhere in there, so.
Chapter 8, verse 28. If anyone, however, does remain forever away from God, it is not because of vengeance on the part of God, but because of the individual's own repeated choice. As Sir William Jones, who helped introduce Indian philosophy to Europe, wrote nearly 2 centuries ago, quote, "I am no Hindu, but I hold the doctrine of the Hindus concerning a future state of reincarnation to be comparably more rational, more pious, and more likely to deter men from vice than the horrid opinions inculcated by Christians on punishment without end." End quote. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that Christianity is wrong, it's that the way, and currently,
You end up paying for your actions one way or
it's
another.
the fanaticism
it's
of any...
the extreme.
Yeah, the extreme Christians, the extreme Muslims, the extreme, whatever
just...
religious sect you want to come from, the extremism is what's wrong, not the teachings themselves.
Yeah, I mean, punishments without end. Because, I mean, at that point, you mess
Jesus
up one time.
nothing
If
but
you mess up once, in some sense,
do
you might as well just
mercy
start being a butthead the whole rest of your life because you're already
exactly,
screwed
right?
for
Like, I'm screwed, I'm going to
eternity, as
hell,
opposed to
so-
realizing that's one mistake
Yeah.
you do.
Or then you have the other end of the spectrum where I'm living a very sinful life, but as long as I accept Jesus before I die, I'll be saved.
Yeah. That last
That
minute
also-
stuff. Like
it's also-
Ajamil did something
well,
similar to
exactly.
that, but it wasn't like a plan,
But
and he got
didn't
lucky.
plan it. He got lucky.
He got
and
lucky. That is not a
was,
good plan.
Again, because God is infinitely merciful.
Yeah.
He's like, you know what?
Absolutely.
But that comes down to sincerity.
Mm-hmm.
God is, according to the Vedic teachings, right? God, you can understand God in 3 different ways. There is God as he is an actual physical being. He's a person. He has his own personality, but then because he's God and he's infinite and he can expand and be everywhere at once, he also exists inside of everything.
Yep.
So every single atom, every single living being, the energy of the living beings is
part and parcel
of the energy of God.
Yeah.
So therefore, God resides as a being. He also resides within everything, and then everything also is residing within Him.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you can almost think about it like inside your body, you have billions of little bacterias and viruses moving around. Technically, they're inside of me, but they're all,
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I think some people have a hard time thinking of God as an actual being. Like,
Yeah.
he,
It's hard. I mean, the other thing too is the whole creation aspect of it. From a purely scientific that wants to decide that there's some miracle accident that occurred that created all this life and stuff that we have. But for anything to exist, something has to have created it, so it could never have come from nothing. Which is like, so the scientific argument in my mind seems to defeat itself at the point of it can't figure out how things were created. Because you get to this place where like something had to have been first. It couldn't have been literally nothing.
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right. It's like you can't answer the question with science.
The interesting thing is, like, the scientific theory of the
I
Big Bang actually does not, like, the Vedic...
It was started with sound.
Well, exactly. The Vedic, the way that, you know, in the Vedic scriptures it talks about creation, it almost does happen in a Big Bang sort of way.
Yeah, it's a sound, but it comes from something. Like, again, the sound is not going to emanate from nowhere.
Exactly.
Like, there's no way that, like, you're in a soundproof room in a vacuum and a sound comes from nowhere and it creates, like, you know, like, it's like something had to have existed, no matter what that something is. And that's where, and I think that the issue is that, like, time, okay, well, then where did God come from? It's like, no, he's always existed. And then you're like,
and
well,
that's
no,
the thing
time.
is infinite.
And for us, the time is the biggest hang up, because you're thinking, like, no, because of time, like, it has to, there's a time, and there's a place, a beginning and end, like, all that. And I was just thinking about this earlier, which not to say that it answers the question.
We should actually read the creation part of the Bhagavatam, because it's very
really
interesting. It explains how among the first things that were created, even before creation, one of the very first things, I don't remember the exact verse, but I want to say it's false ego was the very first thing that was created. So essentially you can think about it as you have this globe, right? And you, the soul, are falling down into the material world. As you hit it, you're now becoming covered. False ego is the sense of me, I, my.
Right.
So that,
time, all the constraints of material energy.
And all of these are all laws of nature.
Well, you think about it like measurements, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could say that, like, you know, you use inches and feet or whatever, and other people use centimeters and millimeters, and, like, everybody uses this measurement system, but at some point that was invented.
Exactly. It's all made up.
And they're using it to measure because it makes their lives easier to have a measurement system. And time is just a much grander than we can possibly really, like, completely logically figure out for ourselves. But, like, really. It's a measurement system. It's a measurement system for the material energy, so that I feel like it almost balances the punishment reward system or whatever, like the you getting the body to enjoy in the way that you want to enjoy. Like, how do you measure that, and how do you know it's time? And so it's a measurement system. It's not that it is something that's part of the actual, like, it's not, it doesn't exist in a sense. I mean, of course.
Time.
It exists as much as our bodies exist.
It does. It exists, but it's like saying gravity. It's like talking about gravity. Gravity exists, but trying to quantify it
is difficult, although easier than time.
Yeah, of course, easier. But time is a very complex thing, and actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, you know, he's listing all of these things that, if you want, you can think of me as this. Right? Like, of fish in the sea, I am the shark. Of animals on land, I am the lion. Like, it's creating imagery so you can kind of compare and contrast, like, what. And one of the things he says is, I am time.
Right. Yeah.
And that is like out of all of the, you know, we can fight the laws of gravity. We can fight, you know, the laws of thermodynamics. Well, you can't really fight them, but you can bend them to your will to some extent. But the one thing that you can never bend is time. And it's the one thing that drags you from birth into death and birth into death. It's from my understanding, it's the thing that separates the material world from the spiritual world is time. Because in the spiritual world, they say multiple places that time doesn't exist there in the way that not in the way we experience it. Yeah. So it's kind of like it's very fascinating. Yeah. Like, that's another thing from the Vedic teachings. Like, as you read them, the fundamentals of their philosophy is like, dude, so in depth, like, compared to Plato, Socrates, some of these Greek philosophers. I mean, they're brilliant, but at the same time, you start listening to some of the Vedic philosophers, and they've been, I mean, they just go, the level of depth that they can take some of these ideas, it's like really, really fascinating. Makes you think a lot about different things. Okay. Okay.
According? Or are you in according? Yeah, according to the doctrine, I think.
Okay, yeah, I read that quote from William Jones.
Yeah.
I'm not really familiar with him. I'd like to look him up a little bit. According to the doctrine of reincarnation, God recognizes and preserves even a small amount of good done by an otherwise evil person. It is rare to see anyone who is 100% sinful. Therefore, if a living being makes some slight degree of spiritual progress in his present life, then in his next life he is allowed to continue from that point. The Lord tells his disciple Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, quote, "In this endeavor, Krishna consciousness, there is no loss or diminution." Diminution?
Diminution, yeah.
Okay. And a little advancement on this path can protect one from the greatest type of fear, returning in a lower than human form in the next life. End quote. The soul may thus develop his inherent spiritual qualities through many lives until he no longer has to reincarnate in a material body and returns to his original home in the spiritual world. This is the special benediction of human life. Even if one is destined to suffer terribly for impious acts performed in this and previous lives, one can, by taking up the process of Krishna consciousness, change his karma. The soul in a human body stands at the evolutionary midpoint. From here, the living being can either choose degradation or liberation from reincarnation. Oh, shoot, man. The soul in a human body stands at the evolutionary midpoint. From here, the living being can choose either degradation or liberation from reincarnation.
Yep.
No pressure, guys.
Nope.
Whew. That was a good chapter.
That was good.
I'll let you read this one. 7.
All right.
Or this one's also broken up into sections, so I don't know how you want to read it.
Yeah, maybe at some point if my voice starts to go out, I'll just like tell you to start up. But we'll wrap up this episode here, and we'll put this one as the next one. We've gone over 30 minutes, and I feel like if we do that, the next one will probably be over an hour. I like to try to keep them around an hour in total length at most. So
you want to do? I mean, we can make it a 30-minute one.
Well, that's what I'm gonna do. This will be a 30-minute one, yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and always feel free to comment or message us. If you do have other things, or especially we're nearing the end of this book. So if you are one of the few people currently listening, and you would like us to read a specific book or something, or add it to the list of things, like we were talking about possibly reading the Bible, and I think Bhagavad Gita is probably the next main one we'll do. But we may do some other side books as well. I don't know exactly what we'll do. We haven't made a final decision, but just let us know. And thank you for spending the time, and we'll see you soon.
Yep. Thank you.